In our world at this time, we see so much turmoil, chaos and sorrow, and so many trying to find solutions in a multitude of ways, with, it seems, very little success. Sophocles gives a very simple solution. One word frees us from the weight and pain of sorrow, and that word is love. Yet the word love has become much misused, twisted and misrepresented, and taken over by the very agencies and systems that are behind so much of our pain. As the Dalai Lama very interestingly informs us, people were created to be loved. Things were created to be used. The reason why the world is in chaos is because things are being loved and people are being used. Absolutely. So the question is, what is love? What is pure, authentic love? Now, our speaker this evening, Sister Jayanti, will help us explore, understand, and experience what is real, pure love. She is the European director of the Brahma Kumaris, and not only is she an insightful speaker who shares and communicates on platforms throughout the world, but Sister Jayanti is also a very powerful yogi. And if you will permit me, I would suggest that we listen experientially to gain the maximum benefit from the experience that she brings. So, Sister Jayanti.
Om Shanti. Who's hearing this term Om Shanti for the first time? You all heard it. And who's here in this house for the first time? Okay, special welcome to those who are here today. Everyone. Jim very rightly said, this word love has been misused in so many different ways. You love ice cream, especially on a hot day. You love your puppy. You love your children. You love your spouse. Many things we love. And of course, the different context of love is a whole big spectrum. The purpose of relationships is to be able to share love and happiness. Would you agree? And does it happen? When we have workshops and we ask, what is the cause of stress? An answer that we get across the world, the highest number one point of stress is relationships. So something's gone wrong somewhere and it needs to be sorted out. Spirituality has a very interesting response. It says that everything starts inside and then it's able to extend outside. What's the conversation that goes on inside your own mind? Is it a conversation of love? Or is it a conversation of fear and guilt and maybe even dislike? Now we start exploring what's going on inside ourselves, and we realize why we're not able to experience happiness in the give and take of love. Love brings us together, but then somewhere along the line it gets polluted. And the pollution is actually not from outside. We think it may be. We think that maybe this happened, that happened, and the other happened, and the other happened, and this is why everything's become jumbled and chaotic and mixed up. But in fact, spirituality always says, start inside. Before you look outside to find the cause of anything and everything, the thing to do is to look inside. And when I look inside myself, and I ask myself the question, well, do I love myself? And in fact, when we even use this expression, let me love myself, it gets challenged very strongly. How can we love ourselves? Surely we're supposed to love other people. Surely it's selfish to love the self. It's these sorts of comments that come at us. But in fact, I can only love others if I first learned to love myself. Do you agree? Oh, okay, you're converted already. Don't have to work too hard this evening. But generally, we don't even know ourselves, and so this is why it's difficult to love ourselves. And you might say, but how come we don't know ourselves? Of course I know myself. I've lived with myself for 30 years, 50 years, 60 years. How can I not know myself? But in fact, the reality is that unless I've been on an inner journey, I don't know myself. And many of you, I imagine, because a lot of you indicated that you have been here before, and so this is part of your spiritual journey, your quest, and so you are on that journey. And you know that it's very, very important to be able to know your own spiritual identity and to understand that the spiritual identity is something quite different to the external form. And the spiritual identity of the self, if you look at this image, you see this point of light. Now, did you know that this is who you are? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But usually when we look in the mirror, we identify with the face, the figure, the style, everything that we see in the mirror. And we identify with that image. Male, female, color of skin, racial characteristics, ethnicity, all of these things. And no, that's not the inner being. The inner being is the being that I truly am, which is actually the powerhouse making this whole thing function. I call it the soul. Some people call it pure consciousness. And I like that term, but it's a bit long. And so I prefer the word soul. But when I first heard this term and somebody talking about how when you go on this inner journey, you have to go beyond your skin, you have to go beyond gender, you have to go beyond profession, position, possessions, all the things that we normally identify with, and come to that pure consciousness which is beyond all of these things. And so I won't keep saying pure consciousness, I'll say soul, but both things are the same. And so coming to the awareness of the soul that I am, I'm able to truly connect with my own inner values, the core values that I hold within myself. And usually, to whatever extent I've been able to know myself, and also I've been able to know what my own inner core values are, and I've been able to spend time in silence, taking power from the divine. I'll explain more about that a little bit later. But if I've been able to take that power from the divine, I'm then able to start loving myself. Why? Because I find that I'm following those core values in my life. One of the reasons why we don't really love ourselves or even like ourselves is because when we connect with the inner being and we see the core values that we have, and then we see we're not following those in our life, this disconnect makes us uncomfortable with ourselves, understandably so. And if I haven't started on my inner journey, I probably haven't even been able to identify what my own inner core values are. And so my world is always the external world. And in the external world, there's always going to be someone physically better looking than me, somebody less better good looking than me. And so I'm going to fluctuate between my inferiority and superiority complex, and I'm never going to come to a stable stage where I can truly love myself. And so, first step, the inner journey, getting to know myself as a spiritual being. Second step, being able to have the power to know my own inner values and to be able to follow those inner values in my life. And when my core values are actually guiding my life and I feel aligned, it's at that moment that then, yes, I can say, I love myself. And until that happens, it's going to be difficult for me to say this. And it's not a question of just saying it to myself. Sometimes people say, fake it till you make it. But it doesn't quite work. If I'm faking it, how can I fake it to myself? I can fake it to others, but I can't fake it to myself. When I put my head on the pillow at night, all the scenes of the day, the whole film is going to be rewinding, and all the things that have happened are going to be jumping up and down or spinning around in my head. And so the starting point of being able to love the self, to know myself, and to follow the core values that actually make me up as a human being. The personality that I am is connected with the core values that I hold. And when I'm able to experience that sense of detachment from my own skin, this is also then the way in which I can connect with the divine. And whatever it is I find is missing within myself, I'm able to take that love from the divine and fill myself with that, not just love, but also all the qualities that I need to have within. Usually, we tend to think of relationships on this level, the horizontal level. But going within, going inwards, and then going upwards. And then the third step, going outwards, then that's going to work out well. If I haven't gone inwards and I haven't gone upwards and connected with the divine, it's going to be challenging to have relationships on this level, which is why the term we heard earlier that has stayed with me, things are meant to be used and people are meant to be loved. And it's become topsy-turvy. We're now loving things, but we're using people. It's a telling story of the world in which we live. And is this what's happening in my relationships? Am I just using people? It's something to ponder over. Don't lose your sleep over it tonight. Think about it tomorrow morning. Better to think about these complicated things in the morning rather than last thing at night when you're trying to let your mind relax and become quiet and fall asleep. So, if I can have my needs fulfilled from the source, then I won't be using people, but rather I'll be sharing something with them. There's a Hindi word which summarizes a lot of this. One word, and it summarizes it. The word devta, and it means dene wala, the one who's able to give. Now, the human soul can go through a whole spectrum of sin, saint, angel, whatever. We can go through many, many different experiences, and we can rise up to the stars, we can fall down and hit ourselves hard. But the human soul can become the devta, the divine being that was created in the image of God. It's a beautiful expression that comes in the East and the West. that the human being was created in the image of the divine. And so God is the one who constantly gives, the bestower, no limits, just an inexhaustible source of everything, the limitless ocean. And human beings, well, where are we on that track? Am I very far away, or am I moving closer and closer and closer to come back to that image in which I have been created? But I've even forgotten about that. I've forgotten who created me. I've forgotten that this was my own original state, that I was that divine being. But now, as I make that connection and I fill myself with all that I need from the source, I no longer use human beings, but rather I'm able to give them something. And first and foremost, I'm able to give them love. I remember some years ago, there was a very powerful individual. Some would have said that maybe he's one of the most powerful persons on the planet. And that's arguable, but very powerful. Wealth, position, power, authority, everything was there. And yet he kept getting into a lot of scandals. And I think for maybe a year, every so often there'd be another scandal that would come, another scandal, another one, another one, another one. And papers at that time, one of them that I read at that time mentioned that this individual seems to be very needy. And so I can have all the things externally, but internally, if I'm empty inside, there's a vacuum in here, I'm needy. And in that neediness, of course, I'm going to use human beings. And so let me turn that around and take from the one who's able to give me and fill myself with everything from that one, and then I can share with others. And the quality of interaction and relationship begins to change. Now I don't come to you because I need something from you. I'm able to give you something instead. Then the quality of love is one in which there's no disappointment, there's no expectation, but rather there's unconditional love. I don't need to put conditions. All my needs have been met, so no conditions. Expectations? No, not at all. What I need, I've received. All my expectations have been fulfilled. And so it's very easy to have an exchange in which truly there's nothing but happiness and love. There's another word that was put on the flyer, and in India in particular, these two words go together. And the first word that comes is not the word love, but the first word that comes is detachment. We use the expression nyara, detached, and pyara, loving. Detached and loving. And in the West, we think that, well, they're opposites. They're at the extreme ends of the two poles. But no, not true. But detachment has had very bad press. We tend to think of detachment as being cold, as rejection, as non-acceptance. Let's try another word. The opposite of detachment is attachment. And when there's attachment, what happens in that scenario? And maybe even the word attachment is something you say, well, that's part of human life. What's wrong with attachment? Of course you have to be attached. Well, try another word here. Possessiveness. Now you begin to see where the danger comes. I can't say possessiveness is natural, normal, it's part of life, because I've experienced how suffering comes from possessiveness on both sides. The one who says, I possess you, and the victim who is being possessed, suffering on both sides, definitely. Agree? Yes? I'm not getting full agreement. Well, maybe by 8 o'clock we'll have got there. Maybe we're still on the journey, which is fine. I think if I'd heard about attachment and detachment when I first came to Raj Yoga, I would have said, what are you going on about? But yes, it's true that when there's possessiveness, then it causes pain to the person who wants to possess, and possessiveness and control are very much the same thing, and control issues are big at this time. Why do you think they're so big now? Maybe it's because we started talking about these things, and 30 years, 40 years ago, we didn't talk about these things so much. I agree, but I think there's another reason. Our insecurity has grown. Rings a bell? We are very, very insecure about everything. And when there's insecurity, the need to control becomes even stronger. And when I'm secure and comfortable within myself, why should I control? I don't need to control. And I don't need to be possessive. And so when there's pure love, and the starting point, I come back to that again, when I'm able to love myself and I'm secure in that knowledge of who I am and stable and confident in that awareness of self-respect and self-esteem, and I love myself, I don't need to control you. I don't need to be possessive about you. I can offer you space. I can offer you freedom, totally secure, knowing that if it's pure love, then that love is going to work like a magnet and we're going to be together. Nothing's going to be able to separate us. It's when there's insecurity and fear that all those other things come again. And so starting inside is really, really the key. And in this whole story of attachment, look at the situation today. The people we're the closest to are usually the people who either hurt us the most or we hurt them the most. Here's somebody you meet once a month maybe, and they say something and it'll roll off your back. You won't even be bothered about it. But somebody you're close to and you appreciate and you love, and they just have to say one word, or maybe the moment that they should say the one word, they don't say that word, and that's when you feel very hurt and damaged, and that scar stays for a very, very long time. You won't say, okay, it's never mind, it's okay, let me move on. It'll really leave an imprint in you, and it'll come. It took them 10 seconds to say that word, but in my mind it takes on such a huge form because I've magnified it. Every time I think about it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and now it's occupying all the space in here. And I'm looking at you through that lens. I'm not looking at you as you are. And even maybe the love that you have for me, that one word or that phrase has stuck in here and is coloring everything. And so it stays with me. And so attachment causes a lot of sorrow. And then the love isn't the pure love in which there's an exchange of joy. And so then there are tears and disappointments and suffering. So I need to get rid of attachment. I need to be able to deal with possessiveness. Think about this chair. If I got attached to this chair and I needed to have this chair with me wherever I go, Can you imagine the problems it would create? It would really be a huge hindrance in my life. And yes, it's doing a great job. It's supporting me greatly. But I get attached to it and I can't move away from it. And it's going to be a huge hindrance in everything I do. So think about a person. I become dependent on one individual. It starts off with just an exchange of help, and then from that help it becomes a dependency, and from that dependency it's become absolute attachment, and it's entrenched, and it's difficult to do anything without first the other one coming in my mind. Instead of being able to think independently, my mind will immediately go to the other. What does this person think of this? What does this person have to say about it? What is their opinion about it? And instead of thinking that it's the one above who can help me, my mind will constantly be hooked into that individual. And probably it'll even interfere in my ability to connect with the source. And I'll find it difficult to be able to draw the love and the power that I need for myself. So a lot of issues come up there. So what is detachment? Detachment is appreciation. Detachment is pure love, unadulterated love, unpolluted love. Detachment is where I understand you, I know what it is you need, and I'm even able to support you and be an instrument to give you help at the time of need. And there's an exchange of love and happiness continually in that state of detachment. I'm there for you when you need me, but I also want you to be free. Have you seen birds in a nest? It's about the time that eggs are hatching and birds are coming out and they're beginning to peep over the nest. I used to watch all this happen in Oxford at our retreat place in the gardens there. You could identify where the nests were and you could see what was going on. The whole life cycle was there opening up. And you'd see the little birds, the chicks, peering out with their mouths wide open, waiting for the parents to drop the food in. But there would come a time when the mother, maybe the father, I'm not sure, but the parents would actually poke the chick to step out of the nest and learn to fly. If the chick were to say, no, I don't want to, well, wouldn't be much life for that little bird. Or if the parent would say, no, I want you to stay in my nest. I don't want you to leave me. Again, it would be depriving that little bird of its lifetime of freedom. Does the same thing happen with our children? We hold on to them, we cling to them, we tell them, no, you need to stay here a bit longer. Or have we prepared them sufficiently to be able to give them that courage and strength and that faith and confidence? The world is yours, out you go, you can fly. So you can see that the difference between pure love and detachment and the state where I enjoy someone being dependent on me. It's not very healthy for me, and it's not healthy for them. But it's a need that I have. I want to be wanted, needed. And so we allow dependencies to continue and grow and get entrenched. But it's actually holding me back from my own spiritual journey and my search for freedom. And it's definitely holding the other one back too. So how do I get to this beautiful state of grace, which is detachment and love together? Not so difficult. Nothing to be stated in words to your family and the ones you love and are closest to. I think that is the biggest mistake, I would say, I've noticed through the years. that instead of understanding detachment to be an inner process in which first and foremost I have to be detached from my own skin, I say to my child, or I say to my spouse, I need to be detached. I'm not going to give you a hug, I'm going to be detached. And that's absolutely going in the right way to turn them away from spirituality. They might not say it, but they'll feel that if this is what spirituality is doing, I'd rather my mum, my dad didn't go. But the inner practice of detachment from my own skin and my consciousness in that higher state of awareness of who I truly am as that inner being is something that I practice inside, in silence, not stating it in words, because my detachment is from my body, so that I can now have firstly mastery over my own body. And in that mastery, what I'm seeing with the right vision. What I'm hearing, my interpretation is going to be positive. What I say is going to be helpful and uplifting, not destructive in any way. Tell somebody, I have to be detached from you, and you're destroying their love. You're destroying the relationship, and that's not what spirituality teaches. And so when I learned that detachment is truly an inner journey, and I focus more and more on the awareness within, something changes in my vision towards the other. Now I'm able to see them as that inner being, that being of light. And when I see them with that vision of the inner being, there's a deeper connection with them than there was before. I don't know how many of you believe in rebirth. Can you give me an indication? Who doesn't believe in rebirth? Okay, thank you. That was easy. Sorry? I'm bringing in another very different concept, but it's connected with what I wanted to share. And my own belief is that the soul is eternal, and when it leaves one chariot body at the time that we call death, it then moves on in its journey. And I think most spiritual people would accept that the soul is eternal, it moves on in its journey. Then the question would be, where does it go? And I would say it takes on another human body to be able to continue with whatever it needs to do, because most times that one journey isn't enough to be able to accomplish everything that we needed to do in many, many different ways. And I'm aware that half the world's population doesn't have that concept of rebirth. But what I wanted to say is that, and I was going to use this word eternal, but I wanted to define it on a human level rather than up there somewhere. On a human level, I know you for some years, maybe even my parent, I know it for 40 years, 50 years of my life, and they move on. But when I know you as a spiritual being, I know you not only for 40, 50 years or 60 years, I know you through eternity. I know that we've been together for a very, very long time. And so there isn't a sense of separation or loss on any level whatsoever. And I found that very helpful in my journey of detachment, that although I'm saying, yes, this is a role you play, this is a role I play, and we're individual, separate human beings, souls with our own destiny. Even parents can't control the destiny of their children. But there's another very interesting word I would use in terms of parenting, and it's the word trustee, stewards. I don't possess my children, right? Or do I possess my child? Mine. It's dangerous, isn't it? And where I know I'm a trustee, this child has come to me as a gift from the universe, a gift from God, however it is you wish to put it. And so my responsibility is to cherish and love and share and inspire and care and do all the things that I need to do as a loving parent. More so than just as a modern parent, put the child in front of the TV box and tell the child, okay, this is your entertainment now, let me get on with other work. I've got lots of work to do, now the box will entertain you. And I know I'm exaggerating a bit, but how many hours do we put our children in front of the box? Whereas in fact, as a trustee, I would be very concerned not only with the physical nourishment I'm giving the child, but what is the mental nourishment I'm giving the child? And the first thing I would do is to put the box in the dustbin outside. I wouldn't give it space in my room inside. That's being a trustee, in a sense. Caring for what it is, not just on the physical level of the child's needs, but also, yes, the emotional needs of the child. I've come to understand that so many adults carry trauma and wounds, and a lot of it can be traced back to childhood, infancy. And the scars that the adult carries are really very, very deep. But of course, a wounded adult creates wounded children and wounded adults. That attack carries on, whether in a subtle form or a gross form, in all our relationships. So this concept of detachment and being a trustee in everything that I have, my children, my home, a trustee in everything that I possess. I belong to the divine, but everything I have has come to me from the divine. And so the love that I take is also something that is then pure, unadulterated love that I share. And it's a love that's able to heal. Love in its purest form never wounds, never hurts, never causes pain. And so this is the greater love that comes when I understand what detachment really is. And without understanding detachment, I can't access that pure love, that highest love, and I can't be an instrument to be able to share that pure love with others either. So rebirth was a bit of a red herring, so you can forget about that. But it just came to my mind because I was thinking about the eternal relationship of soul to soul, rather than a short-term relationship. What are the signs of pure love? When there's pure love, it uplifts, it empowers, it heals, it gives joy, and it allows the other to move forward. It always wants the other to be better today than they were yesterday, and to be better tomorrow than they were today, always seeking ways in which to help them move forward. It's a sharing of great joy. And so, in the love that I experience from the divine, I begin to understand what is pure love and how to be able to fill myself with it. And because all the things that I mentioned are the things of that pure love, then this is what I can see. Is this what I'm giving to others also? Pure love does not criticize. Pure love does not see defects. Pure love does not comment on weaknesses and hold those conditions in the mind. Just a few minutes ago, before I came here, somebody said, I need to be worthy of love. And that's an interesting paradox, because on the one side, God gives unconditional love. And so where does this comment about being worthy of love come in? It has a truth in it. Why would it still be a comment that people make unless there was something there? But I think the truth within it, certainly in terms of the relationship with the divine, is that to whatever extent I'm following the inner core values that I spoke about earlier, and I'm able to love myself, to that extent I'm open to be able to experience God's love, and I'm able to share love with others, but also I'm able to have the grace to be able to accept the love that others give me. Where there's a sense of failure or pain, and there's the memory of deception and being let down from the past, then all those scars create a block. And somebody might be trying to give me love, but I'm totally resistant, because the fear of being hurt again has created this huge barrier. And again, it's been a question that I must have been asked many, many times. You try and love somebody, but they're not ready to accept that love. And that's the reason. The reason is that all these defense mechanisms have been put up, and so the love isn't able to reach. And so the answer that I heard from a yogi many years ago, when she was speaking about the whole subject of love, was, I mustn't put a time frame on it. I mustn't say I've been giving love for a week, a month, a year, 5 years, 10 years, and they're still not responding. But if I've filled myself with love, then there's no limit. I just have to keep giving love. And at some point, just as water is even able to make a rough stone become smooth. Have you ever seen smooth stones in water? How come they're so smooth? Well, it's just the gentle wash of the water that's washed away all the roughness of the edges and made it become smooth. And so the power of love, whatever were the rough edges that were preventing the love from reaching the other soul, keep giving, and the defenses will gradually melt away, wash away, and the soul will be ready to accept that love. But it also applies in terms of our relationship with the divine. God is sending out all the love of the ocean without any limit, without any restrictions, without any conditions. But am I able to receive that love? When I'm comfortable with myself, because I'm aligned, my values and my actions are together, they're synchronizing, then at that moment I'm open to feeling God's love, receiving God's love, and being an instrument. But the last thing I want to touch upon is the big difference between a greater love, not just God's love, or not just even a higher quality of my love, but a greater love which is able to encompass all my neighbors, not just one here, but all my neighbors, which means the whole of humanity. We tend to think of love in terms of 1, 2, 4, or 6, or 8, my family, or my neighbors, or my kith and kin. But a greater love, a love that's able to encompass absolutely every human being. Now that love also is only possible when I've moved away from my limitations of attachments. You remember that story about the astronauts and how when they went up in space, what they were able to see was, they wrote about it, and they wrote that when they first began to see this blue pearl in this ocean of darkness, the blue pearl, the Earth, they were identifying with Houston, where they'd lifted up from. And then they were identifying with the continent, America. Then, after they'd gone round in orbit several times, they were no longer identifying with a city or a continent. It was my home, my planet, the whole world. And so we don't need to go up in spaceships to change our vision and our attitude, but meditation is the way to do it. Let me go up above and be able to see the world as my home and all people as my family. And yes, then it'll be much easier to manage all the tensions and all the conflicts that we are struggling with today, all the divisions that exist within a family, but within a neighborhood or within a country. All those things get resolved when my vision changes. And so, how do I see myself? Do I see myself as that divine being created in the image of the divine? Do I see myself as part of a world family? Or am I still stuck? And if I'm happy to be stuck, well, that's fine. It's okay. At some point, it'll begin to feel a bit uncomfortable, and I'll begin to feel, this is a little bit too small for me and I want to fly. So when that moment comes, that'll be the right moment. But if I'm ready to fly now, detachment is the key. Thank you for your attention.